So you grew up in Somerville outside of Boston. Have you been back to Maine in recent years?
Yeah, we went back in 1995, and we spent the summer there in Maine.
Yeah, the last time we spoke, we were speaking of the Maine public employee retirement system pension crisis, which is going to need a bailout from the taxpayers to the tune of about $1 billion. And we mentioned that Chief Investment Officer, Mr. Sawyer, Andrew Sawyer, didn't see the reason in investing in gold. He was calling it a storage of wealth, not a creator of wealth. That was about 2 months ago we did that. Since then, gold's gone up another 9% in 2 months. And I have had email contact with Mr. Sawyer. No indication that they're going to get any of the pension fund in gold, unfortunately.
Well, that's why the pension funds are in the state that they're in today. I mean, these people are incompetent. They don't have a clue to what's going on. They listen to what's coming out of Wall Street in Washington. Wall Street and banking have a vested interest in you not being in gold and silver or commodities because they want to sell you the garbage that they've got for sale. And garbage it is. And in Washington, you get a bunch of bureaucrats running around who want world government. And that's probably the same as what you'll find within the structure of the administration in every state, not just Maine. I mean, they don't get it. They don't have a clue how serious this is. I mean, just look at what's going on in the mortgage industry. I mean, nobody knows who owns what.
Yeah, is that the equivalent of the politicians in D.C. not reading the bills? The lenders and whatnot don't read their fine print either, apparently.
Well, it's sort of like a throwaway, you know. Whatever. Sorry about that. It's just the dingbat attitude of not only Americans, people all over the world. They've all fallen into that nomenclature of stupidity. That's what we'll call it.
Right.
And there's no excuse for it. I mean, these people get brains, they just don't want to think outside the box. I've been recommending gold and silver shares for the last 10 years. People have made a fortune. I mean, some of the stocks I recommended are $75 a share. We recommended them at $4. We never traded them. And we got one that's $25. We put out at, recommended it at 80 cents. I mean, this is, you know, people aren't listening. Only 2% of the population is involved in gold and silver related assets, and it's the only thing that you can go to that'll guarantee that you won't lose your money in the middle of a deflationary depression, which will come in time.
Right, so if only 2 people are in, I mean, the bull run hasn't even started yet, really.
Well, I call this the beginning of phase 2, and we'll have either 3, 4, or 5 phases. It's hard to tell. Right now, gold and silver are climbing in a bull market wall of worry. And what that means is nobody believes it. It keeps on going up.
Right.
And so, well, what does that mean? That means something real serious is going on. The public's not involved, and the public will get involved in the next to the last stage. And then there'll probably be a blow-off like there is in every other bull market. But maybe not. I mean, we've got a currency that's got to be devalued. It gets devalued every day along with every other currency versus gold and silver. And then it would be a devaluation against other currencies, and it's coming. And any currency that they have will have to be backed by gold, whether they like it or not.
Well, Bob, I wanted to ask you about the dollar. As I mentioned, you know, here in Maine and probably most public schools, high school, you don't learn a lot about money besides balancing a checkbook. Even in college, I didn't learn much about money. Just talk about the dollar, because I don't think people realize what a threat it is if the dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency. Can you tell us, what does having the dollar be the world's reserve currency do for us?
It allows you to print money endlessly. And that's what they've done. There has been no discipline whatsoever. During the 1960s, we had the Vietnam era, and in August of 15th, 1971, Richard Nixon took America off the gold standard. Prior to that, if other nations wanted to cash in dollars, they could for gold. Well, they decided they couldn't do that anymore because their debts were getting onerous. Well, if they were still around today, they would look at the situation and say, gee, they certainly weren't as onerous as we thought it was. But that's what started the ball rolling. And so this place as the reserve currency of the world has waned over those years in relation to other currencies, other countries, and as well versus gold and silver, which is pretty obvious. And we just went in the last 10 years from $252 an ounce in gold to $1,350 something. And this thing is going lots higher. And what it means is that America is going to become a different place. For those of you who lived during the 1940s and 50s like I did, it's going to be like that. There's not going to be a lot of jobs. People won't be buying cars every other year. Everybody will be much more frugal in their spending. Unemployment's going to remain high for a long time for a multitude of factors. And it's going to be very, very difficult. The whole world's going to suffer because they're holding dollars. It wasn't yet a year and a half ago, foreign nations were holding 64.5% of their foreign reserves in dollars. Today that figure is about 59 to 59.5%. I don't have any late figures. But anyway, that's a big change. What's going to end up happening is because foreigners are going to be unwilling, and presently their willingness is waning in buying U.S. Treasuries and agency securities. The agency securities are Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, and FHA. And the Fed's going to end up owning them all. And they can do that because they can create money out of thin air. But when they do that, that money becomes what they call monetized. It goes into the economy and it creates inflation. And that's what's going on right now. And it's going to continue to go on until they can't do it anymore, which means this coming year we'll have 14% inflation. The government won't admit to that because they lie about everything. Right now they say inflation's 1.6%. I say it's 7%. And I've been doing this for over 50 years, and I was educated in New England, I'll have you know. Went to Northeastern University.
Great school.
And the People's School, if you may.
Right.
And I believe that we may, in the following year, and we may have a QE3, you may see inflation at 30, 40, 50%.
That would be another round of quantitative easing. So this is basically to liquidate the debt, is it not?
It's to service the debt, and they're creating new debt every minute. In the next election, you have to kick out of office anybody who's in there. I don't care what party they're in, because 95% of them are on the take. They're getting paid off with campaign contributions. And it's become more onerous in this election than ever before. And it's got to be stopped. And the only way you can stop that is by changing the people in Congress and hope you can be successful. Because if you're not successful in doing that, you're going to have a revolution in the United States. That's where it's going to end up.
Well, I read yesterday that Ron Paul has announced that if the dollar continues to collapse, he will be running for president in 2012. So that's given people a glimmer of hope.
And that's a great idea. He should have got it last time, but he didn't. And the world, America, is ready for a guy like him. Yes, he's 75 years old. He's three months older than I am. And my birthday's on Saturday, I'll have you know. And he'll make a great president. Years and years of experience in Washington. Super duper, first class human being. We need people like that, and his time has come. and hopefully he will be elected at the next election. And if he's not, you better take the cosmoline off your weapons, because you're going to need it.
That's pretty strong words, but these are pretty wild times, you know. People ask me, why do you get so into politics? And I said, you know, truth is stranger than fiction. Who needs wild soap operas on television? Just pay attention to what's going on in the world. Very strange times we live in. Revolutionary times, perhaps.
Well, nobody knows it better than New Englanders. They've been through all this many, many times.
Right.
And to greater or lesser degrees, but this is so dynamic. The underlying financial and economic problems are far worse today than they were in the 1930s, by a factor of 10. And just to show you how leveraged this whole thing is, the large banks in New York City are lending out, are using $40 for every dollar they have on deposit. It's called fractional banking. And what is assumed to be normal is 9 times. And that goes back several hundred years. The Fed in New York, right this minute, is leveraged 71 to 1. Now, these Federal Reserve banks have a thing called the Federal Open Market Committee. And they dictate to the Federal Reserve in Washington because they own the Fed. And who are they? J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, etc. And some of the owners are Americans, and some of them are Europeans. And it's been that way since 1913 when the Fed was formed. So where does the problem lie? The problem lies in the greed of the bankers. That's where it lies, and particularly in the hands of the Federal Reserve, that privately owned corporation that tells us all the time that they can't tell us anything because it's a state secret. Well, how can it be a state secret if you're a private organization and you don't belong to the government? You work with the government, but you don't belong to them. And so this is why we're in the fix we're in. The banks went berserk, and they lent money into the mortgage industry, which brought about a horrible real estate boom that ended in a bubble and a bust. And incidentally, we made the call on that, and we said the top of the market before it happened was in June of 2005, and that's exactly when it happened. And we've made some fantastic calls. Take me 10 minutes to go over them. And we've been right 98% of the time, let's just put it that way. And so where is this all headed? It's headed towards real trouble. And you say to yourself, well, gee, what can I do to protect myself? Well, I think the most important thing is that you have to understand that there's a good chance you might become unemployed.
Absolutely.
And if you do, you better have some freeze-dried and dehydrated food in your home, or canned goods that you can rotate if you can't afford that, and a water filter, and something to defend your family. Those are the fundamental things that you need.